Hi everybody, I'm a little late in posting this, so we will go through this a little bit quickly because I wanted to make sure this was posted before we have our second day in the markets. We are already in the middle of a moon wobble that was exact last Friday, and we did have a downturn, a slight downturn in the market, but the probability of having high volatility all this month is very high, and particularly in this first week, full week in January for the markets, because of the nodes being involved with the Mars-Uranus. Now, if you'll remember, at the end of December, after all the protests regarding Ferguson, and then I think it was Eric Garner that was killed by the New York Police Department by asphyxiation, and then we had two police officers that were shot in their police car. And if you remember that, we had the New York Police Department became strong in the funeral with 10,000 officers, and they turned their back on the mayor. So this issue of the militarization of the police and the fact that everyone's calling for them to be wearing body cameras is not over, and the protests and the events are not over. So I fully anticipate that the markets will be in high volatility for this month because of the exactness of the Mars square Uranus all of this quarter, but in January in particular it should be particularly strong. We are not done with those events yet. We're not going to be done with those until after April, when this 5-year aspect separates and we have an eclipse period with the lunar and the solar eclipse. So we expect major events still this month, but for anyone who's following Eris, note that January 13th, that the Sun is in a square aspect to Eris, which may be the possible ruler of Taurus. So we want to see if there's any Taurus-like events, because the Sun will create an external event or a news item that's likely to be relevant. But during that time period, that very same time period, we have Mars square Saturn from January 10th to January 18th. So again, we're very likely to see a suppression of prices in the marketplace. I would think that we might find a bottom of oil during this period of time. I think that we have a conscious reduction in oil prices by various governments, particularly the US government, and that it's a concerted effort to basically starve out Putin and some other regimes that we don't particularly like, because ISIS funds many of their activities through oil, and Venezuela does too, and they're not exactly friendly to the United States. So I'd anticipate a down market, or at least some very extreme ups and downs, and a shakeout of a lot of people being stopped out of safety nets for themselves. Then let's go on and look for February. So in February, things should ease up and the tension should reduce. I think we'll see a calming down. We actually have some good aspects on the center of February 6th. So I would think that we should see some positive speculation and some upturns in the market, with Sun opposition to Sagittarius. Maybe we'll see some positive bills or some legislation come in place to try and do some social change and make life better. And then toward the end of the month, specifically on February the 23rd, but it actually starts February 21st, the center's on the 23rd, and it finishes up on the 25th, we have Sun opposition Saturn, and traditionally the markets will take a dip during that time. They've been pretty accurate for the past 2 years that when you have Sun-Saturn aspects, that the market will do a temporary drop. So I would anticipate that to be occurring in February. Let's look at March now. March winds up being much more dramatic, and I would expect more protests or more violence during this time. It really heats up starting March 8th through the 16th, but especially the 10th, the 11th, and 12th, because Mars comes in aspect to Uranus. Usually there's death by gunshot, there's bombings, and this Uranus opposition Pluto is still exact. So I'm anticipating that we're going to see a lot more violence or protests or unexpected events of violence during that specific period. Now, generally, the markets very little react to that, but you'll see it in the news. What's more important is that the lunar node, we start having an eclipse period, and the lunar node is exact on March the 20th. And it should continue into that period that we have the moon wobble exact on the 30th and 31st, and then we go into a lunar eclipse in April. So we have this very volatile period from end of March to mid-April, and then things will calm down after that. So do expect news events, violence, more marching, and the question is, will we have any more volatility in the market? Generally, we do have big dips in the market, but I find the market is not always reliable when it comes to eclipses, to hitting the changes in the market, but it will have world events. I thought we should give a small homage to Joanne Quigley, who died in 2014, because she was the astrologer for Nancy Reagan and President Reagan. We tend to forget that astrologers have been used throughout history by leaders of various countries, including President Franklin Roosevelt, who even had a brass plaque of his horoscope on his desk during his presidency. And many of our founding fathers followed astrology because they were Masons. And so there's a long astrological history in the United States that we forget. And she was our last noted national astrologer that served for the president. So a small homage to Joanne for her death and her service to the country. I will be posting on time for April, since we're going to be in the middle of the eclipse period. Good trading, good luck to everyone in 2015.